Mr. Ellington. Her voice cracked on the second syllable of my name. Please. 200 people in that ballroom went completely silent. Stephanie Whitfield, the woman who had once sat at our kitchen table in a silk robe and told me she deserved better than a bus driver's life, was standing in the middle of the most important night of my career, tears streaming down a face she had spent 40 minutes perfecting in a mirror somewhere, her hands pressed flat on the table in front of her like she needed it to hold her upright. I didn't know, she whispered. This whole time, Darius. I swear to you, I had no idea it was you. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass near the back. I looked at her from the stage. Steady. Unhurried. The way a man looks at something he has been waiting a long time to see and feels, now that it has arrived, something far more complicated than satisfaction. I know you didn't know, Stephanie, I said into the microphone. I let the silence sit for exactly 3 seconds. That was the point. Before we begin, let's see who gets here first. Like this video and comment your country below. I'll be checking the comments. Now let's continue. My name is Darius Ellington. I am 40 years old. I have driven a city bus through the streets of Atlanta for 11 years, through ice storms and heat advisories, and the particular 6 a.m. darkness of January mornings when the city feels like it belongs only to the people who cannot afford to stay home. I am not ashamed of a single day of it. But I want to take you back to a Tuesday morning in April, about 2 years before that ballroom, because that Tuesday is where this story actually begins. Not with the divorce, which came later. Not with the business, which came later still. But with a breakfast table and a bouquet of yellow tulips and a silence that told me everything I needed to know about the life I was living. I had stopped the evening before at the flower stand outside the Kroger on Peachtree Road. The woman who ran it knew me by then. Every Tuesday, same order. Yellow tulips, wrapped in brown paper. Because 3 years into our marriage, on a Sunday drive back from her parents' house, Stephanie had said almost to herself, watching the roadside go by, yellow tulips are the only flower that actually looks like it means it. I had remembered that. I always remembered things like that about her. I set the tulips in the blue vase on the kitchen counter that night and went to bed before she came home from her networking dinner. I was driving the 5:47 a.m. departure the next morning, and I needed the sleep. What I did not know was that she had come home at 11, seen the tulips, and left them there without putting them in water. I found out the next morning. I came downstairs at 5 o'clock, still pulling my uniform jacket on, and there they were. Yellow tulips in a dry vase on the counter, already beginning to lean. A small thing. The kind of small thing that in a good marriage means nothing. In a marriage that is quietly ending, it means everything. I stood at that counter for a moment with my travel mug in my hand, looking at those tulips the way you look at evidence you weren't ready to examine. I heard Stephanie moving upstairs. The particular sound of her getting ready, the bathroom faucet, the soft thud of a drawer. She was up early too. She had a breakfast meeting downtown with a client from her father's events company, where she had been working as an account director for 3 years. She came downstairs in a charcoal blazer, gold earrings, heels she hadn't broken in yet. She moved through the kitchen the way people move through spaces they no longer fully inhabit, efficiently, without looking too hard at anything. She poured coffee. She checked her phone. She picked up her tote bag. She walked past the tulips without once looking at them. Have a good shift, she said toward the general direction of the room, and the front door opened and closed, and I stood alone in my kitchen with a dry vase and flowers that were already past saving. I put them in water anyway. That detail matters. Remember it. I drove Route 47 that morning the way I drove it every morning. Steady hands, time stops. Good morning to the regulars who boarded at the same spots week after week. There was Mr. Calloway who sold insurance and always had the AJC folded to the crossword. There was the young woman from the hospital whose scrubs changed color depending on her department rotation. There were the early morning construction workers who boarded at Campbellton Road with thermoses and tired eyes. I knew all of them. Not their stories, necessarily, but their rhythms. And knowing someone's rhythm, the exact time they show up, the way they settle into a seat, the particular quality of their morning, that is its own kind of knowing. I thought about Stephanie the whole drive. Not with anger. With the particular clear-eyed sadness of a man who has been watching something die slowly and has not yet found the courage to name it out loud. That evening I came home to find her on the back porch with a glass of wine and her phone. She did not hear me come through the back door. Or if she did not turn. I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched her through the glass for a moment. She was smiling at something on the screen. Typing. The smile that I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year. I had seen that smile aimed at a name in her phone that appeared too often in places I wasn't supposed to notice. A name I had clocked 6 months earlier and filed away without confrontation, the way you file something you aren't ready to act on yet. Eric Vane, junior account executive at a competing events firm. I had said nothing. I had simply, quietly, begun to pay very close attention. I went upstairs, changed out of my uniform, sat at my desk, and opened the laptop. The business plan I'd been building for 14 months was in a folder on the desktop. I read through the projections for the 43rd time. Then I picked up my phone and called my sister Celeste. "I think the timeline needs to move up," I said when she answered. A pause. She knew exactly what I meant. "How soon?" "Soon," I said. "Define soon, Darius." "Before she defines it for me," I said. Another pause, longer this time. "All right," Celeste said quietly. "I'll call the attorney in the morning." I hung up. I looked at the business plan on the screen. Outside the window, Atlanta hummed and glowed in the April dark, full of motion, full of gaps that needed filling, full of the particular kind of opportunity that only reveals itself to people who have spent enough time moving through it at ground level. I closed the laptop. I went back downstairs and moved the tulips from the blue vase to the good glass one. Added fresh water. Trimmed the stems the way my mother had taught me. They lasted 4 more days. Nobody commented on them. You need to understand something about how I was built before I go any further. My father, Gerald Ellington, drove a city bus in Atlanta for 23 years. He retired at 61 with a perfect attendance record and a pension that covered his needs and very few of his wants, and he considered that a life well lived. He built furniture on weekends in the garage, bookshelves, mostly, the kind with proper dovetail joints. And he always said the same thing when I asked him why he bothered making things the hard way when the hardware store sold them already built. Because the thing you make with your hands, son, that's the thing nobody can take from you. He died the winter I turned 32. Heart attack. A Thursday morning in February, 3 weeks after Stephanie and I got back from our honeymoon in Charleston. He never saw what I would build, but I built it the way he would have recognized, with patience, with precision, with the understanding that a foundation made in a hurry is just a surface waiting to crack. I had been driving Route 47 for 3 years when the idea for Ellington Transit Solutions first appeared in my mind. Not as a business, not yet, just as a question. Why does no one in this city coordinate private corporate transit the right way? Atlanta had the problem badly. A sprawling metro area, insufficient public transit coverage, downtown parking that cost more than some people's rent. Companies were losing employees to commute fatigue. Junior staff without cars were missing shifts. Corporate campuses in the suburbs were inaccessible to entire talent pools. I saw it from the seat of a bus every single day. I took my first night class in business administration at Georgia State 2 years into my marriage. Stephanie thought it was a hobby. I let her think that, partly because I wasn't ready to explain the full shape of the idea, and partly because I had learned, quietly, and without making it a point of conflict, that Stephanie's interest in what I was building existed in direct proportion to how finished it looked. She was not a woman who invested in blueprints. She invested in finished rooms. So I built quietly. Celeste was my partner in it from the beginning. She was 35, worked in corporate finance downtown, and had the specific combination of analytical precision and stubborn belief in me that I think only a sibling who has watched you your whole life can carry. She ran projections on Wednesday evenings at her dining room table while I drove in earlier that day, and she never once suggested I slow down or think smaller. "You have an advantage nobody can manufacture," she told me one Wednesday, pushing her glasses up and turning the laptop to show me the market analysis she'd built. "You have 11 years of experiential data about how Atlanta actually moves. Not theory, not models, reality. That is worth more than an MBA." We registered Ellington Transit Solutions, LLC 16 months before Stephanie asked for the divorce. We had already secured 2 small pilot contracts, shuttle coordination for a law firm in Buckhead and a logistics company in Sandy Springs, and both had renewed. The revenue was modest. The proof of concept was not. What Stephanie did not know, because she had stopped asking about the night classes after the first year and had never once opened the laptop I left on the desk in plain view, was that the business development loan I had applied for 8 months earlier had been approved. $40,000, secured against nothing but a detailed plan and a credit history that 11 years of steady employment had built to something worth trusting. That money was not in our joint account. It was in Ellington Transit Solutions' operating account, already partially deployed against a third pilot contract I was about to win. I want to be clear about something, because it matters. I did not hide this to deceive Stephanie. I disclosed the loan in our shared financial documents, the way an honest man discloses everything. I simply did not narrate it to her, because she had made it clear, in the particular language of disinterest that a spouse learns to read fluently, that she did not consider my business ideas worth her attention. She would consider them worth her attention soon enough. It was a Sunday morning in May, 5 weeks after the tulip morning, when Stephanie sat across from me at the kitchen table and said the thing she had been rehearsing. I could tell she had rehearsed it. The cadence was too even, the eye contact too steady. Stephanie, when she was speaking from pure feeling, always looked slightly to the left of whoever she was talking to. That morning she looked directly at me, and I knew before the first word left her mouth that I was about to hear a prepared speech. Darius, I think we've grown in different directions. I set my coffee mug down. Okay, I said. She blinked. That was not the response she had rehearsed for. I need more than this, she said. I need someone who is. I need to be with someone who is moving towards something. I looked at her steadily. I am moving towards something, I said. I mean something real, she said. And then she stopped, hearing it herself, and the composure slipped just slightly. I didn't mean it like. Yes, you did, I said. Gently, without heat. And that's okay, Stephanie. You're allowed to want what you want. She pressed her lips together. I want a divorce, she said. Okay, I said again. She waited for more. I gave her nothing more, because there was nothing more to give that would have changed anything she had already decided. A man who argues against a door that is already closing is not fighting for his marriage. He is just making noise. I called Celeste from the driveway 30 minutes later. She asked, I said. A silence. You okay? Celeste said. I'm going to be, I said. But I need the attorney this week, not next week. I'll call him tonight, she said. I hung up and sat in the driveway of the house Stephanie and I had bought together, looking at the garden she had planted 3 summers ago and slowly stopped tending. The roses needed cutting back. The jasmine along the fence had gone too far in one direction. I thought about my father and his dovetail joints. Then I started the car and drove. The attorney my sister arranged was a precise, unhurried man named Franklin Johnson who wore the same brand of reading glasses my father had worn and inspired, in me, the same quiet confidence. We met in his office on a Thursday evening, 3 days after Stephanie's kitchen table speech. I laid out everything. The LLC, the loan, the pilot contracts, the projections. Franklin listened with his hands folded and his glasses on, and when I finished he said, You've been methodical about this. I've had time, I said. He nodded. What do you want the outcome to look like? I want a clean separation, I said. Fair split of shared assets. My business is mine alone. I want that documented clearly. And the house. I thought about the garden. The jasmine that had gone sideways. She can keep it, I said. She'll need the stability more than I will. Franklin looked at me over his glasses. You understand what you're walking away from in equity. I understand what I'm walking toward, I said. He nodded once and wrote something on his legal pad. The mediation was handled over 2 sessions. Stephanie arrived to both with her composure fully assembled and her attorney beside her, a woman named Diane who was sharp, efficient, and clearly accustomed to winning. In the second session, Diane floated a proposed asset division that would have allocated significantly more of the shared savings to Stephanie, on the basis that her earning potential had been limited by the marriage. Franklin looked at the proposal for 30 seconds. Then he laid 3 documents on the table. The LLC registration, predating the marriage's final year by 14 months. The loan approval, disclosed in full in our joint financial records. The 2 renewed pilot contracts, showing active revenue. My client, Franklin said pleasantly, has been building an independent business venture for the duration of this marriage, with full financial disclosure at every stage. His earning potential is not limited. It is ascending. Diane looked at the documents. Then at Stephanie. Stephanie looked at me. Something moved across her face. Not guilt exactly. More like the particular expression of someone who has just realized that the cards on the table are not the cards they assumed were being held. I met her eyes steadily and said nothing. We reached a fair settlement by the end of that session. Stephanie kept the house, the shared savings, and the joint account balance. I kept Ellington Transit Solutions, the loan, and the 43 months of operational knowledge that lived inside my head. She thought she had won that room. She had won a house with a garden she didn't tend and a mortgage she would have to carry on a single income. I had won a company, a clean separation, and a very specific clarity of purpose that divorce, when it arrives this way, has a remarkable ability to sharpen. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in West in the first week of June. The second bedroom became my office. That same week, Ellington Transit Solutions submitted the proposal for its largest contract yet, coordinated shuttle management for a pharmaceutical firm expanding its Midtown campus. We won it 3 weeks later. I called Celeste from the parking lot of my apartment building when the email came through. She answered on the first ring. "Well," she said. "We got it," I said. A shriek on her end that I held the phone away from my ear to survive. "I'm getting in my car," she said. "Do not open anything until I get there." I sat in the parking lot laughing for the first time in what felt like a very long time, with the Atlanta evening warm around me and the sound of my sister's joy still ringing in my ear, and I thought, this is the beginning. Right here, this exact moment. What I did not know yet was what was already beginning to unravel on the other side of the city. 6 weeks after I moved into West End, Eric Johnson, my new operations coordinator, a solid and perceptive man who had spent a decade in logistics and possessed the rare quality of making complex things feel simple, told me over lunch that he wanted me to meet someone. "She's not a setup," he said immediately, the way people say things that are absolutely a setup. "She's a friend. You just have things to talk about." "What kind of things?" I said. "Business things. Life things." He shrugged. "Just come to dinner." Her name was Nadia Carver. She arrived at the restaurant 8 minutes late, apologized with a single sentence and no performance of it, sat down across from me, and within the first 10 minutes had asked me 2 specific questions about coordinated transit logistics that told me, without any possibility of misreading, that she had looked up Ellington Transit Solutions before sitting down at this table. Nobody had ever done that before. I mean that precisely. In 11 years of driving and 2 years of building, not one person outside of Celeste and Franklin Johnson had ever done the work of learning what I was building before they arrived to talk to me about it. Stephanie, in 9 years of marriage, had never once read a page of the business plan that lived in plain sight on the desktop of our shared computer. Nadia had spent an evening reading about the Atlanta private transit market because she was having dinner with someone who worked in it. I sat with that for a moment, quietly, while she talked about a logistics gap she'd noticed near the Beltline from her own work coordinating vendor transport for her design firm's larger installation projects. "You noticed that from vendor coordination?" I said. "I notice everything from vendor coordination," she said. "You learn more about how a city actually works from managing the people who move things through it than from any planning document." I looked at her. "That's exactly right," I said. She smiled. Not the smile of someone who has said the right thing. The smile of someone who already knew it was right and is pleased to find someone who knows it too. Nadia Carver was 38 years old and the co-owner of a graphic design and spatial installation firm in East Atlanta called Groundwork Studio that she had built from a spare room in her apartment over 6 years. She was precise, careful, occasionally funny in the way that takes you completely by surprise, and she had a quality I had not encountered often enough in my life. She was genuinely, consistently interested in what other people were building. Not performing interest. Actually curious. We had coffee the following Tuesday. Dinner 2 weeks after that. A walk through Piedmont Park on a Saturday in July where we talked for 2 hours about business and failure and the particular education of building something when nobody is paying attention, and parted at the parking lot with the easy, unhurried feeling of 2 people who have found that the other person's company makes the day feel lighter. She had been through a marriage of her own. 4 years, ended 2 years before we met. That had left her the way certain kinds of damage leave a person, not broken, but carefully selective about where she placed her trust. So we moved slowly. Not because either of us was uninterested, but because we had both learned the cost of moving fast in the wrong direction and had no desire to learn it again. What she gave me during those early months was not grand. It was consistent. A text at the end of a hard day. A specific question about a contract I'd mentioned in passing. The reliable presence of someone who remembered the things you told them and brought them back in later conversations, which is one of the clearest signals of genuine attention one person can give another. One evening in August, sitting on the back steps of Groundwork Studio after a long client day, she said something that I have thought about many times since. People keep waiting to be seen by the people who already decided not to look, she said, pulling her jacket tighter against the late summer cool. They keep performing for an audience that left. Meanwhile, the people who are actually paying attention are just standing right here. I looked at her. Who left your audience? I asked. She smiled sideways. Someone who thought my business was a hobby because it didn't look finished yet. A pause. Yours? Someone who thought my work was something to apologize for, I said. She nodded slowly. No pity in it. Just recognition. We sat there a while longer in the quiet of the evening. Two people who understood each other without requiring a great deal of words to accomplish it. And something in my chest that had been held at a careful, protective distance for the better part of a year began, quietly and without announcement, to ease. I told Celeste about her that Friday over the budget reports. Celeste set her pen down. A significant gesture from a woman who treated stillness as currency. She looked at me over her glasses. Does she ask about the business because she wants something from it? Celeste said. Or because she's actually interested in what you're building? She came to the first dinner having already read about the company. I said. Celeste picked her pen back up. Marry her, she said. Celeste. I'm not joking, Darius. That quality is rare. Don't waste it. I laughed, but I kept the thought somewhere warm. I want to tell you what was happening on the other side of Atlanta while I was building. I know what was happening because some of it I saw. Some of it reached me through the particular efficiency of people who knew both of us, and some of it Celeste told me in that careful tone she used when delivering information she suspected I would rather not have, but believed I needed. Stephanie moved Eric Vane into the house on Cascade Road within 2 months of the divorce being finalized. He lasted 5 months. I heard about his departure from a mutual friend who delivered the information with the particular delicacy people use when they expect the other person to gloat. I did not gloat. I noted it the way you note weather in a city you no longer live in. Then came Devin Harris. He was 34, worked in real estate development, drove a leased Range Rover, and showed up regularly enough in Stephanie's social media posts, captioned with things like finally in my season and energy protected, blessings multiplying, that people forwarded them to me with expectant expressions, waiting for a reaction. I looked at those photographs the way I had looked at everything from that part of my life since the divorce, with the calm, specific distance of a man who has redirected his energy entirely. What I noticed, looking at those images with honest eyes, was that Stephanie looked happy in the way that a person looks happy when they are working very hard at appearing happy. There is a difference. I had known her face for 9 years. I could see the work in it. Devin Harris presented himself as a man of means. He had the clothes, the car, the vocabulary of success, and the particular social fluency of someone who has learned to seem wealthy without the structure that makes wealth real. What he did not have, as Celeste found out through the specific intelligence network of Atlanta's professional community, which is smaller and more interconnected than most people realize, was the substance behind the surface. By the time I was 18 months out of the marriage, Ellington Transit Solutions had 12 full-time employees. For company vehicles with the logo Celeste and Nadia had designed together one Sunday afternoon, and contracts with 9 corporate clients across Midtown, Buckhead, and the northern suburbs. By that same point, Devin Harris had 3 creditors beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about debts he had structured in ways that were creative rather than sound. I did not know the specific numbers yet. I did not need to. What I knew was this. Cornelius Whitfield, Stephanie's father, had called me on a Tuesday afternoon in October, and his voice had the weight of a man carrying something he had been carrying alone for too long. I want to tell you about Cornelius before I tell you about that call, because he deserves to be understood clearly. Cornelius Whitfield had built Whitfield Events Management from a folding table and a rented telephone line in 1987. He had grown it over 37 years into a mid-sized firm that coordinated corporate events, galas, product launches, and civic ceremonies across the Atlanta metro area. He had built it with the particular combination of personal integrity and relentless follow-through that creates a reputation so solid in a professional community that clients stay not because they have to, but because they trust the man behind the name. He had always treated me with respect, even when Stephanie had not. Especially then. He had pulled me aside at a family dinner 2 years into my marriage. Stephanie was in the kitchen, her mother was in the garden, and said quietly, with his hand briefly on my shoulder, "She'll understand what she has, son. Give her time. Some people have to learn the value of a thing after they've been without it for a while." I had thanked him and changed the subject because the alternative was feeling too much in the middle of someone else's family gathering. When he called me that October Tuesday, I answered on the second ring. "Darius." His voice was careful, measured, the voice of a man choosing every word. "I hope I'm not crossing a line calling you directly." "You're not, sir," I said. A pause. "I've been hearing things about what you've built. From people I respect in this city." Another pause. "I want you to know I'm not surprised. I never was." I let that sit for a moment. "I appreciate that, Cornelius," I said. "I'm calling because Whitfield Events is in trouble," he said. Simply, directly, without dressing it. Real trouble. I've been losing corporate clients for 2 years to a competitor with deeper pockets who came in and undercut every contract I had. My operating credit line is at its limit. The bank is asking questions that I don't have comfortable answers to. I sat forward in my chair. "I'm calling you," he continued, "because I believe you understand business in a way that might see something I'm missing. And because," he paused, "because you are the most honest man my daughter ever brought home. And right now, honest is what I need most." I held the phone for a long moment. "Can we meet this week?" I said. "Name the day," he said. I heard the relief in those 3 words. The specific, careful relief of a proud man who has just set down something extremely heavy and is trying not to show how heavy it was. I hung up and sat for a long time in my office, looking at the Atlanta skyline through the window. Celeste appeared in my doorway 20 minutes later with 2 cups of coffee and that specific expression of hers, somewhere between amusement and calculation, that told me she already knew something. "He called you, didn't he?" she said. Not a question. "How did you know?" I said. "Because I've been tracking Whitfield Events' public filings for 6 months, she said, setting a coffee on my desk. "And because Stephanie has been working there full-time since April, which means she is directly aware of how bad it is." She sat down. "Darius, Devin Harris left Atlanta 3 weeks ago. Creditors are involved. She moved back to her mother's house in Decatur in September." I absorbed that. "Is she okay?" I said, and I meant it. Whatever Stephanie had done and whoever she had become in the years since the kitchen table speech, I had known her for 9 years, and I was not built for indifference. Celeste studied me. "Financially, no. Otherwise," she paused. "She's working hard, trying to hold her father's company together." A pause. "She doesn't know her father is calling you." I nodded slowly. "What are you going to do?" Celeste said. I looked at the window for a moment. The city below, moving in its evening rhythms. "The right thing," I said. "Same as always." Celeste was quiet for a moment. Then, "Make sure you know which right thing you mean. The one for Cornelius. The one for the company. Or the one that gives you the room to watch her finally understand." I looked at my sister. "Maybe all 3 can be the same thing," I said. She shook her head slowly. "Not usually," she said. "Not without being very careful." I thought about that for 3 days straight. I met Cornelius at a coffee shop in Midtown on a Thursday morning. He was already there when I arrived, both hands around a mug, a folder of documents on the table beside him. He stood when he saw me and shook my hand with both of his, the grip of a man who had been raised to mean what a handshake promised. We sat. He talked. I listened without interrupting, which seemed to be what he needed most, to be heard by someone who would not panic at what he was saying or manage their own reaction while he was still speaking. The picture he laid out was serious, but not unsalvageable. A 2-year revenue decline driven by a competitor who had entered the Atlanta corporate events market with a strategy specifically designed to undercut Whitfield's price point on mid-tier contracts. The cash flow problem had been building quietly, while Cornelius managed it the way proud men manage things they are ashamed of, by not letting anyone else see the management. What he had not fully seen yet was the path through. I asked him questions for 90 minutes. He answered every one honestly, including the 2 things he had mentioned at the end of the phone call. a deferred tax obligation, and a vendor relationship that had been allowed to deteriorate past the point of easy repair. When I had the full picture, I sat back and looked at my notes. "Your company is not broken," I said. He looked at me. "The revenue model is strained and the cash position is critical," I said. "But the reputation is intact. Your client relationships, the ones that stayed, are loyal for a reason. That's the asset that matters. You build from that." "And the partnership?" he said carefully. I had been thinking about it for 3 days. I had run the numbers with Celeste twice and had Nadia stress test the logic from a different angle over dinner, because Nadia's ability to find the structural weakness in a plan was something I had learned to treat as one of the most valuable resources available to me. "There's a real case," I said. "Ellington's corporate client network is full of companies that need event coordination. We've been referring that business outward because we didn't have a partner position to receive it. That referral pipeline redirected to Whitfield could stabilize your revenue within 2 quarters. Cornelius looked at me for a long moment. Something moved across his face that was not quite emotion, but was close to it. The expression of a man who has been carrying something alone and has just been offered a hand without being asked to beg for it. "I need my daughter involved in the details," he said carefully. "She's been running the client side. She knows the operational picture better than anyone." There it was. I had known it was coming. I had been waiting for it the way you wait for a shift in wind when you can feel the pressure changing, but cannot yet name the direction. "I know," I said. He looked at me carefully. "She doesn't know I've been talking to you." "I figured that," I said. A long pause. "Darius," he said, "I need to ask you something directly." "Go ahead," I said. "Are you capable of doing this clean?" he said. "No score settling. No using this situation for anything it shouldn't be used for. Because she is my daughter and I love her even when she's wrong. And I will not let what she did to you become something that damages her further." I respected the question. I respected him for asking it directly. "I'm building a business, Cornelius," I said. "Not a trap." I paused. "But I won't pretend she won't have to sit in the same room as what she underestimated. That part is unavoidable." He nodded slowly. "Accepting that. Then I'd like to move forward," he said. We shook hands across the coffee table. Driving back to Marietta Street, I called Nadia. "How did it go?" she said. "It went," I said. "Celeste was right. Stephanie is going to be in the room eventually." A pause. "Are you okay with that?" Nadia said. I thought about the tulips I had kept watering after Stephanie walked past them without looking. I thought about the business plan on the laptop nobody had opened. I thought about 11 years of early mornings and the particular dignity of work that does not require anyone's applause to be worth doing. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay with it." "Darius." "Yeah. Make sure you're doing this to build something," she said. "Not to show someone what they lost." "I know the difference," I said. A pause. "I know you do," she said. "I just wanted you to hear yourself say it." The call that changed the sequence came from Yvonne Tate, my head of client relations, on a Wednesday afternoon in late October. Yvonne was 39, incisively professional, and possessed of the specific quality of someone who delivers information exactly as it is without editorial softening. "There's a woman in the lobby," she said. "She says her name is Stephanie Whitfield. She says she doesn't have an appointment, but she has a proposal she needs to present to whoever handles partnership development." A pause. "She's carrying a portfolio, and she looks like she rehearsed the whole elevator ride up." The office went very quiet inside me. Cornelius had not told her he was in conversation with me. He had mentioned, apparently, that he was in early-stage discussion with a transit company about a potential partnership, and had given her the company name to research and a time slot to come in and present formally, as he always made his team do, because Cornelius Whitfield believed that a proposal worth taking seriously was worth arriving prepared to defend. She did not know whose name was on the door. Ellington Transit Solutions was listed on the glass. Not Darius Ellington. The LLC. "Send her up," I said. I heard Yvonne relay the instruction. I stood at my desk for a moment. The Atlanta skyline stretched behind me through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the October light cutting long and amber across the city. I thought about a breakfast table in April, yellow tulips in a dry vase, a woman who had walked past them without looking. Then I sat down, put my hands flat on the desk, and waited. The footsteps in the hallway were familiar in a way that hit me lower than I expected. Not painfully, more with the dull recognition of something that used to be central to your daily life and is now simply a remnant. The door opened. Stephanie walked in carrying a leather portfolio and the composed, prepared expression of a woman who had spent considerable time building a professional presentation and an equal amount of time making sure she looked like the version of herself she most wanted to be seen as. She stopped so completely when she saw me that the portfolio swung on her arm. For a full 4 seconds, neither of us existed anywhere except in that specific, suspended moment. She had changed in the way that difficulty changes a person who wasn't built expecting it. Not dramatically, but honestly, in the set of her jaw, in the way her eyes arrived at me with more weight behind them than they used to carry. "Darius," she said. A whisper. "Stephanie," I said. "Even." She looked around the office. At Yvonne, who was watching with her professional face securely in place. At Eric Johnson, who was standing near the window, and who had the particular quality of stillness of a man who knows more context than he is showing. At the framed Ellington Transit Solutions mission statement on the wall. At the view of Atlanta behind me through the glass. Her eyes came back to me. "This is your company," she said. "Yes," I said. "My father knew," she said. "He knew whose it was," I said. "He chose what to tell you." Something moved across her face. Rapid. Internal. A woman recalculating an entire landscape. "I came here to present a partnership proposal," she said. The composure was reasserting itself, the way I had seen it reassert itself 100 times in 9 years, Stephanie's particular armor snapping back into place. "I researched your company. I built a full proposal." "I did not know," she stopped. "I did not know." "I know you didn't know," I said quietly. Those 4 words landed differently than the ones I would say again later in that ballroom. Here they were private. Just the 2 of us and 2 employees who were professional enough to be elsewhere in their attention. I pulled back the chair across from me. "Sit down, Stephanie," I said. "Show me what you built." She presented for 45 minutes. I want to say this plainly, because it matters, and because I am not a man who revises the truth to fit a neater narrative. The proposal was excellent. It was specific, structured, and built on a genuine and sophisticated understanding of both companies' operational positions. She had identified the referral pipeline gap between Ellington's corporate network and Whitfield's events capacity the same way I had, from the other direction, and had quantified it with numbers that were within 8% of Celeste's projections. She had worked hard on this. The kind of hard that comes from someone who needs it to be right. When she finished, Eric asked 2 operational questions, and Yvonne asked 1 about client conflict protocols. Stephanie answered all 3 without hesitation, with the specific fluency of someone who has been inside the details of their industry long enough that the answers live in muscle memory. When the questions were done, I asked Eric and Yvonne to give us the room. They gathered their things and left with the practiced discretion of people who understood exactly what was happening and had the professional grace not to make it visible. The door closed. Atlanta hummed quietly outside the glass. The afternoon light had gone golden and long, the way October light does in this city, warm and slightly elegiac, like the day is aware it is ending. Stephanie sat across from me with her hands folded on top of the closed portfolio, and we looked at each other for a moment in the particular way that 2 people look at each other when 9 years of history are in the room with them and neither of them is pretending otherwise. "How long have you been building this?" she said. "I registered the LLC while we were still married," I said. 16 months before you sat down at the kitchen table." She absorbed that slowly. "I didn't know," she said. "You didn't ask," I said. "Not cruelly, just factually. The way you state geography." She looked down at her hands. Something in the composure changed, not collapsed but shifted, like watching a structure settle from one position into a truer one. "I know I didn't," she said quietly. "I stopped looking at anything you were building a long time before I said it out loud." I was quiet. "Devin is gone," she said, not asking for sympathy, just placing the fact in the room between us, where it belonged. "He was not," she paused. "He was not what he presented himself to be. And I spent 2 years not looking carefully enough at that either." A pause. I seem to have a pattern of not looking carefully enough at the things that matter. I said nothing. I let her keep going. "I'm living at my mother's house," she said. "I'm working full-time trying to hold my father's company together. And I walked in here today having done more research into this business in 1 week than I did into our entire marriage." She looked up at me. "I know what I did. Not just the divorce. The way I saw you. The way I talked about you. The way I measured you against things that had nothing to do with your worth." "Stephanie." I need to say this, she said. Please. I was quiet. You put yellow tulips on our kitchen counter every Tuesday for 3 years, she said. Because I said something once on a Sunday drive. I never even told you I noticed. She stopped. Her voice, which had been holding steady through an act of visible will, cracked slightly on the next words. I walked past them every morning, and I never once told you what they meant to me. The office was very still. They meant something? I said, quietly. Everything, she said. I was too far inside my own idea of what my life was supposed to look like to let anything real reach me. A pause. I am sorry, Darius. Not for the divorce. Maybe we needed that. I am sorry for the way I saw you. For the years I spent being ashamed of work that was honest and good. You deserved better than that. You always did. I looked at her for a long time. I know, I said. I said it without cruelty and without performance. Simply, the way you receive something true. The partnership has merit, I told her. Celeste is going to want to spend 2 weeks with the full financials before anything goes to contract stage. That means you and I are going to be in professional contact regularly. I paused. We do this cleanly. We do it for the business, for your father's company, and for what's best for both. No other agenda on either side. Are we clear? Yes, she said. And whatever else was between us, I said, that stays on the other side of that door. In here, we are 2 professionals who respect each other and want the work to succeed. She met my eyes. Yes, she said again. Steadier this time. I stood and extended my hand. She looked at it for a moment. Then she stood and shook it. Professionally. Firmly. I'll have Celeste reach out by end of week, I said. She nodded and gathered her portfolio. At the door, she paused without turning around. Darius. Yeah. The company is really something, she said. What you built. It's really something. She left without waiting for my response. I stood at the window for a long time after she was gone, looking at the city, feeling the particular quiet of a moment that has arrived exactly when it was supposed to and landed exactly as heavily as it deserved. Then I called Nadia. The Ellington Transit Solutions annual partner event had been on the calendar for 6 months. We held it every November, a formal gathering of our corporate clients, key vendors, civic partners, and the full company staff. This year it had grown significantly. 214 confirmed attendees. A hotel ballroom in Midtown. The kind of event that announces to a city that you are no longer an emerging company, but an established one. This year it was also the occasion for the public announcement of the Ellington-Whitfield Partnership Agreement, which Celeste and Stephanie had finalized through 2 weeks of detailed, professional, and, by Celeste's account, impressively disciplined negotiation. Celeste reported back to me on those sessions with the measured tone she used when something was going better than expected and she didn't want to jinx it. She's good, Celeste admitted one evening, setting a folder on my desk. Analytically, operationally, in the room. She knows the business. She fights for the right things and concedes the right things. I don't say that lightly. I know you don't, I said. It doesn't change anything, Celeste said. About what she did. About who she was. No, I agreed. But it's worth noting, she said, that the person sitting across from me in those sessions is working very hard to become someone different. I nodded. Nadia came to find me in my office 3 days before the event. She had a key to the building by then. We had been in each other's lives fully enough by that point that keys had been exchanged without ceremony. The way things happen between people who have decided to stop treating permanence as something that requires a formal announcement. She sat across from my desk and looked at me for a moment. You're going to see her in 3 days in front of 200 people, she said. I know, I said. How are you feeling about it? I thought about it genuinely, the way I tried to do with her questions because she always asked them in a way that deserved a genuine answer. I don't need it to be anything, I said. I built what I built. The event is what the event is. What she sees is what she sees. Nadia looked at me, carefully, the way she looked at me when she was deciding whether to say the next thing. Celeste told me about the yellow tulips, she said. I was quiet. That she said they meant everything, Nadia said. And never told you. Yeah, I said. How does that feel? I thought about it for a long moment. Really thought about it. The way you think about something you have been keeping in a careful box for a long time and are only now allowing yourself to open. Like something that was real, I said finally. That got buried under everything she decided mattered more. I paused. I don't think she was a bad person, Nadia. I think she was a person who got so lost inside the life she thought she was supposed to have that she couldn't see the life she actually had. Nadia was quiet. That's generous, she said. It's accurate, I said. She reached across the desk and took my hand. Just held it for a moment. No words required. After the event, she said, I'm taking you somewhere quiet, and we're going to eat good food and not talk about any of this for at least 4 hours. I laughed. Deal, I said. She stood to leave, then stopped at the door. Darius. Yeah. You know what makes this story different from a revenge story? What? I said. She smiled. You kept watering the tulips, she said, even after she stopped seeing them. That's not a man building a trap. That's a man who knew his own worth even when someone he loved couldn't see it. She left. I sat with that for a long time. Then I opened my desk drawer and took out a single item I'd been keeping there for 2 weeks. A small card, written in Celeste's handwriting, that read, Dad would have loved this night. Drive it home, little brother. I set it on the desk in front of me. Then I opened the event program and read through my remarks one final time. The night arrived the way important nights arrive, ordinary in its practical details and extraordinary in everything underneath them. I dressed carefully, dark charcoal suit, the one Nadia had stood beside me choosing in a midtown shop 2 months earlier, the one that Celeste had approved with a single nod that meant more than a speech would have. I looked at myself in the mirror of the hotel room I'd taken for the evening and felt, for the first time in a long time, exactly like myself. Not the self I was performing for anyone, just the specific, unadorned truth of who I had become after everything that had required becoming. The ballroom was full by 7. 214 people, corporate clients, civic partners, vendors, and every Ellington Transit Solutions employee, from Eric and Yvonne to the 3 newest drivers Celeste had hired out of our partnership with a workforce development program on the west side. Stephanie was there with Cornelius. I saw them from across the room before I went to the stage. Her father distinguished and composed in a navy suit, Stephanie beside him in deep burgundy, carrying herself with the particular carefully maintained steadiness of someone who is managing a great deal of internal weather with visible discipline. She did not know what was coming. She knew about the partnership announcement. She did not know the form the evening would take. She did not know about the video Celeste had assembled, with Nadia's design expertise giving it a visual quality that made it feel like something that belonged on a large screen in a formal room. She did not know that I had been the one to suggest that the company's founding story be told in full tonight and in public, for the first time, to this room. I was introduced to the stage at 8:15 by the District Transit Commissioner, a woman named Gloria Reeves who had been one of the earliest public sector voices to take Ellington Transit Solutions seriously, back when we were still 4 vehicles and a hope. I walked to the podium and looked out at 214 people, the city light visible through the ballroom's tall windows behind me, the room warm with the specific energy of a gathering that has already had enough good conversation to be genuinely receptive. I found Stephanie in the crowd, 3rd table from the back on the left. She was looking at me, had been looking at me since I appeared on the stage, with an expression I could not fully read from that distance, but which carried in it something that had nothing to do with the professional composure she had been maintaining for 6 weeks. I looked away. I looked at the room. 11 years ago, I said, I was driving bus route 47 through the south side of Atlanta. I drove it in ice storms. I drove it on 95-degree July mornings. I drove it the day my father died, because my shift started at 5:47 and a man who depended on that bus to get to work deserved to have it arrive. The room was very quiet. I want to be clear tonight about something, I said. Those 11 years were not time I was waiting to live my real life. They were the education that made everything in this room possible. Every contract we've ever won, every operational decision that worked, every client relationship that held. It was built on what I learned from a seat behind that wheel, watching this city move. I let that sit. 2 years ago, I registered Ellington Transit Solutions with $40,000, a business plan I had been building for over a year, and a sister who believed in it before I fully believed in it myself. I paused. Tonight we have 63 employees, 22 corporate transit contracts, and a new partnership with Whitfield Events Management that I believe will become one of the most significant collaborations in Atlanta's events and logistics industry. Applause rose through the room. Before we announce that partnership formally, I said, I want to show you something. The lights dimmed. The screen behind me came to life. What Celeste and Nadia had built together was not a corporate highlight reel. It was something more honest than that. Footage of the early days, specific and unglamorous. Me in the West End apartment at the desk that was also the dining table. Celeste at her kitchen table with spreadsheets and cold coffee. The first two company vehicles parked outside a rented storage unit with the logo slightly crooked because we'd applied it ourselves on a windy afternoon. Eric Johnson on his first day, shaking my hand in a parking lot. Both of us looking like men who understood exactly how much work was in front of them. Then it shifted. A clip of our first major contract signing. Celeste openly wiping her eyes while trying to maintain composure and failing. The look on Eric's face when we won the pharmaceutical campus contract. The look of a man who backed something early and is watching it become real. Then Nadia's contribution. She had found something I did not know she had. A photograph she had taken on her phone during one of our early dinners, before I knew she was taking it. I was looking out the restaurant window at the street, a half-eaten meal in front of me, the particular focused elsewhere expression of a man thinking about something that mattered more than wherever he was sitting. I looked, in that photograph, like exactly what I was. Someone carrying something large and private and important toward a horizon nobody else could yet see. She had placed it at the end of the reel with no text beneath it. Just the image. The room was silent for a long time after it ended. I heard someone near the front blow out a careful breath. A woman 3 tables back pressed her napkin to her eyes. Gloria Reeves, sitting at the head table, was applauding before the lights were fully back. The applause built, rose, became the full room sound of 214 people responding not to a corporate milestone, but to something that felt true. And then, through that sound, I heard it. The particular resonant crack of crystal on a hard floor. I looked toward the third table from the back on the left. Stephanie was standing. Her champagne flute had slipped from her fingers and shattered on the ballroom floor, crystal catching the room's light in a brief scatter of brilliance. Her hand was still in the position of holding something that was no longer there. Her eyes were fixed on me across the room with an expression I had never seen on her face in 9 years. Not the performed emotion, not the managed reaction, but the raw, unguarded, irreversible impact of someone who has just fully understood something it is too late to undo. Heads turned. People looked. A server moved toward the broken glass with the quiet efficiency of someone trained for exactly this. But the moment had already happened, and the room knew it had happened, and 200 people held themselves very still in the specific way a room holds still when it has sensed something real occurring inside it. I looked at Stephanie. She looked at me. Cornelius, beside her, had his hand on her arm. He was not looking at her. He was looking at me, and he gave me the smallest possible nod. The nod of a man who has spent a long time knowing something his daughter did not, and who is watching the night he always believed would eventually arrive finally become the present tense. I looked back at the room. I'd like to invite Cornelius and Stephanie Whitfield to the stage, I said, to sign the formal partnership agreement between Ellington Transit Solutions and Whitfield Events Management. The applause returned, warmer this time. Cornelius came to the stage first. He shook my hand the way he had at the coffee shop, holding it 1 beat longer than a business handshake, the hold of a man saying with his grip what the room didn't need to hear spoken. Stephanie came to the stage second. She stood beside her father. She looked at me once, briefly, directly, before looking at the document Celeste had placed on the podium. Her hands were not entirely steady when she signed, but she signed cleanly, completely, and without hesitation. The room responded with the warmth of people who have witnessed something that carries more weight than the occasion requires and are glad to have been present for it. After the formal proceedings ended and the room moved into the reception, Stephanie found me near the hallway that led to the side rooms, away from the main crowd. 5 minutes, she said. Please. I looked at her. 5 minutes, I agreed. We stepped into a small room off the main ballroom, a room with a window that looked out over Midtown, the city lit in all its November warmth. She stood a few feet from me and looked at me for a moment without speaking, gathering the words she had carried into this room. I knew what you meant out there, she said. When you said that was the point. I waited. You didn't set this up to hurt me, she said. You didn't engineer any of this to watch me break. I know that. What broke was, that was just the truth arriving at the speed of everything I hadn't been willing to see. She paused. I've been living with the truth for 6 weeks, since I walked into your conference room. Tonight was just the truth in front of 200 people instead of 3. Yes, I said. She nodded. She pressed her lips together. I want to ask you something, she said. And I want you to answer honestly, even if the answer is hard. Okay, I said. Was there a part of you, any part, that needed me to see this? Not for the company. Not for the partnership. For you? I looked at her for a long time. Yes, I said. She nodded, like she had expected that and respected it. Then I'm glad you got it, she said quietly. You earned it. Every piece of it. A pause. And I'm glad I was here to see who you became. Even if it cost me everything I thought I had to lose it. We stood in the quiet of that small room with the city glowing beyond the window. The partnership is going to work, I said. The numbers are right, and the people are right. Your father's company is going to be okay. She exhaled. A long, relieved breath. Thank you, she said. Thank Cornelius, I said. He was the one who was willing to make the call. She almost smiled at that. Almost. He always did see you more clearly than I did, she said. She left the room. I stood at the window for a moment alone, looking at the city I had driven through for 11 years from behind a bus windshield, learning its patterns and its gaps, and its specific kind of possibility from the only seat that gave you the ground-level view. Nothing about that time was wasted. Not 1 hour of it. Everything I had learned from that seat was now operating in 22 contracts, 63 employees, and a partnership that was going to keep a 37-year-old company alive. My father had built bookshelves with dovetail joints in a garage, the kind of joints nobody sees, but which are the reason the whole structure holds. I had been building dovetail joints for 11 years. I found Nadia near the main exit, coat already on, her expression carrying the specific warmth of someone who is proud of something they love without needing to perform the pride. Ready? She said. Yeah, I said. She took my hand. We walked out of that ballroom together through the lobby and into the November Atlanta night, the city cool and clear above us, the streets moving in their steady rhythms, buses and cars, and people with somewhere to be, and I breathed the night air and felt the particular quality of peace that has nothing to do with arrival and everything to do with knowing, clearly and without reservation, exactly who you are and what your hands have built. I had driven these streets for 11 years. Now these streets had a company on them that bore my name. I had not become someone different to do it. I had become, fully and without apology, the person I had always been when nobody was measuring it. That, in the end, is the only revenge worth having. Not the moment someone sees what they lost, but the life you are already living when they do. Nadia squeezed my hand. Food, she said. Food, I agreed. And we drove into the city together, steady and unhurried, the way you move through a life that finally belongs entirely to you. If anyone has ever made you feel small for the work you do with your hands, keep building. The foundation you lay when no one is watching is the thing everything else eventually stands on. And the person who couldn't see your worth while you were building it will one day stand in what you built and understand, finally, the full cost of what they couldn't see. Your quiet years are not wasted. They are accumulating. Thank you for being part of this amazing community. If you enjoyed today's story, like this video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who loves great stories. See you next time.